The pursuit of untold truth is not something that comes easily or casually. It requires a deep inner awakening, a desire that moves beyond mere curiosity and into the realm of conviction. People often settle with what is given to them on the surface, repeating phrases they have heard, inheriting narratives passed down through cultures, or accepting the stories that dominate public consciousness without much questioning. Yet, the untold truth does not rest in such places. It hides beneath layers of time, behind biases that society constructs, and sometimes behind the fears that people nurture within themselves. To seek the untold truth is to commit oneself to a path of sincerity, to say that I will not merely accept what is convenient, but I will strive to discover what is real, what is genuine, even if it unsettles me or places me in discomfort. It requires a level of humility, because one must acknowledge that perhaps what they know is incomplete, perhaps what they cling to is not the entire story, and perhaps the truth demands more patience, more effort, and more sacrifice than they originally imagined. When we speak of the pursuit of truth, it is not only in historical matters or intellectual debates, it extends into the very fabric of personal life. How often do people construct masks around themselves, presenting one image while concealing another? How often do communities shape identities that only reflect partial realities, ignoring the voices of those who suffer in silence? Untold truth is everywhere, waiting to be discovered not only in the pages of history, but in the depths of the human soul. To pursue it is to step into a space of courage, to be willing to confront one's own weaknesses, to admit that there is more to learn, and to accept that the path to truth will often be uncomfortable. It is this discomfort that becomes the test, for many would rather remain within the comfort of half-truths than struggle with the weight of reality. The pursuit of untold truth also means battling the laziness of the mind. Human beings often prefer ease, and ease comes in the form of accepting what is popular, what is widely circulated, and what appears simple to digest. But the reality of truth is that it demands investigation, reflection, and careful analysis. It requires distinguishing between what is authentic and what is fabricated, between what is substantiated and what is speculative. The pursuit of untold truth is a struggle against the temptation of shortcuts, a refusal to be satisfied with superficial explanations, and a commitment to journey deeper, even if that journey is long and arduous. It is in this process that character is built, because one learns patience, resilience, and integrity through the act of searching. There is also a spiritual element to this pursuit. Truth is not merely about facts and figures, it is also about meaning, purpose, and wisdom. To uncover untold truths is to be guided towards deeper understanding, to see patterns that were hidden before, and to connect pieces of knowledge that may otherwise seem unrelated. This spiritual element transforms the pursuit into something far greater than an intellectual exercise. It becomes a form of growth that refines the soul and sharpens the mind. Every time one uncovers a piece of truth that had been neglected or concealed, it adds light to the heart and clarity to the vision. That light is not just personal, it radiates outward, influencing others and contributing to the collective awareness of society. It is important to recognize that the pursuit of untold truth is not always celebrated. In many cases, it is resisted. People who challenge dominant narratives are often silenced or ridiculed, and their pursuit of truth is portrayed as unnecessary or even dangerous. Yet, this resistance is part of the process, for it demonstrates that truth carries weight, that it disrupts false comfort, and that it shakes structures that rely on ignorance to sustain themselves. The pursuit of truth is therefore not a passive activity. It is an act of courage, an act of resistance, and an act of devotion to principles higher than convenience. Those who embark on this path must be prepared for obstacles, but they must also know that every step taken towards the truth strengthens them, even if the world around them does not immediately recognize the value of their struggle. One of the most profound aspects of pursuing untold truth is that it builds legacy. Those who dedicate themselves to truth often leave behind inspiration for future generations. The truth they uncover becomes a seed that grows, a seed that others will water and nurture until it blossoms into something far greater. Even if one cannot reveal all truths in a lifetime, the act of searching ensures that others will continue the journey, that the chain of seekers will never break. This continuity gives meaning to the pursuit because it shows that truth is not confined to one person or one era, but is a timeless quest that transcends individuals and binds humanity together. Thus, the pursuit of untold truth is both a personal journey and a collective responsibility. It is about being honest with oneself, about daring to question what others shy away from, and about contributing to a greater awareness that benefits not just the present, but also the future. It is not a path for the faint of heart, but for those willing to sacrifice comfort for clarity, convenience for conviction, and popularity for authenticity. It is this pursuit that defines the difference between those who live within illusions and those who strive to live in the light of what is real. Criteria of authenticity are what separate truth from illusion, reality from fabrication, and wisdom from mere repetition. It is not enough to simply hear something and assume it must be true because it has been spoken many times or because it has been passed down by people of authority. Truth demands a standard, a framework through which claims can be evaluated and weighed. Without such criteria, everything becomes blurred and uncertain, leaving people vulnerable to myths, half-truths, and manipulations that serve particular agendas rather than reality itself. The human mind has a natural tendency to believe stories that fit its desires or expectations, but the path of truth requires discipline, a willingness to restrain emotions, and the courage to demand evidence. This is why the criteria of authenticity matter, because they prevent us from falling into the traps of blind acceptance and allow us to discern between what deserves our trust and what must be discarded. In every field of knowledge, there are standards by which truth is measured. In history, one must look at sources, verify their chains of transmission, and examine the context in which events were recorded. In science, one must test hypotheses, conduct experiments, and evaluate results through rigorous methods. In personal life, one must weigh words against actions and promises against actual behavior. This principle is universal. Authenticity is not a matter of assumption, it is a matter of verification. When people ignore these criteria, they begin to construct entire worldviews on shaky foundations, and when those foundations collapse, they are left in confusion and disarray. This is why societies that value truth emphasize the importance of evidence, consistency, and accountability, for these are the pillars upon which genuine knowledge stands. At the same time, criteria of authenticity also protect communities from the dangers of manipulation. Throughout history, countless individuals have risen to power by crafting convincing stories that lack any real basis. They understood that people are often swayed more by rhetoric than by reality, and they exploited this weakness to spread falsehoods. When a society loses its ability to distinguish between truth and fabrication, it becomes vulnerable to such manipulation, allowing lies to spread unchecked until they become accepted as fact. The criteria of authenticity act as a shield against this corruption, empowering individuals to question, to investigate, and to demand proof rather than submitting blindly to eloquent words or emotional appeals. One of the challenges, however, is that not everyone wants to apply these criteria consistently. Often, people hold double standards. They demand strong evidence when a truth challenges their worldview, but they accept weak claims when those claims align with their desires. This inconsistency reflects the human tendency towards bias, a tendency that clouds judgment and leads to selective reasoning. True commitment to authenticity requires fairness, a readiness to apply the same standards across all matters, whether they support or contradict one's own position. This fairness is difficult because it requires a level of objectivity that goes against natural inclinations, but it is precisely this objectivity that allows a person to rise above personal bias and approach the truth with integrity. Another dimension of the criteria of authenticity lies in the importance of context. A statement, an event, or even a text cannot be understood in isolation. It must be examined in relation to the time, the culture, and the circumstances in which it arose. Without context, truths are distorted, leading to misunderstandings and misinterpretations that can have lasting consequences. For example, words taken out of their historical or cultural setting can be twisted to mean something entirely different from what was intended. The pursuit of authenticity therefore demands careful consideration of context, ensuring that meaning is preserved and that truth is not misused to serve false agendas. The role of intellectual integrity cannot be overlooked either. Authenticity does not depend solely on external evidence, but also on the inner honesty of the seeker. A person may find strong proof, but if they approach it with a closed heart, refusing to accept anything that challenges their pride or status, then that truth will remain hidden from them. Intellectual integrity means admitting when one is wrong, being willing to abandon cherished beliefs if they are shown to be baseless, and embracing truth even when it comes at personal cost. This is one of the highest forms of sincerity because it elevates the value of truth above ego, above reputation, and above convenience. The criteria of authenticity also extend to the way we transmit knowledge. If truth is to be preserved for future generations, it cannot be passed down carelessly. Accuracy, clarity, and responsibility must guide the process of transmission, ensuring that what is handed over is reliable and trustworthy. Every generation inherits not only stories and facts, but also the responsibility to safeguard them from distortion. When this responsibility is neglected, the chain weakens, and the truths of the past become vulnerable to being lost or reshaped according to the whims of those who seek to control them. Upholding the criteria of authenticity is therefore not just an individual duty, but a collective obligation, one that sustains the integrity of knowledge across time. Ultimately, the criteria of authenticity remind us that truth is precious, and anything precious requires protection. It is easy to spread words, but difficult to preserve meaning. It is easy to claim knowledge, but difficult to ensure its reliability. By committing ourselves to the pursuit of authenticity, we protect not only our own understanding, but also the integrity of the knowledge we pass on to others. It is this commitment that ensures truth remains distinct from falsehood, that wisdom remains distinct from mere opinion, and that reality remains distinct from illusion. What is visible on the surface often deceives, presenting a picture that appears complete but in reality only shows fragments of the whole. The untold truth hides beneath layers of appearances, and unless one is willing to look beyond what is immediately seen or heard, one remains trapped within partial realities. People are naturally inclined to accept the surface as sufficient because it is easier and requires less effort. A story repeated by many, an event portrayed in a single frame, or a judgment made after a brief encounter feels like enough to form an opinion. Yet the reality of life is that the deeper essence, the more meaningful insights, and the greater wisdom always rest beyond the obvious. To uncover these truths, one must train the heart and mind to pierce through layers of distraction and simplification to see what lies beneath the veil. This principle applies in every dimension of human existence. In personal relationships, how often does someone smile outwardly while concealing inner pain? How often do people portray strength while struggling with weakness that no one else can see? The untold truth is that the human experience is layered and complex, and the surface rarely reveals the whole. To judge a person based solely on appearances, to assume we know them based only on what they show, is to remain blind to the richness of their reality. Deeper truths emerge only when we look carefully, when we listen with empathy, and when we are willing to acknowledge that there is always more to a person's story than what meets the eye. In society at large, this same principle unfolds. The narratives we hear in media, the simplified headlines, the quick judgments about events and people often tell only a fraction of the truth. Realities are shaped by perspectives, by selective information, and by forces that highlight some aspects while concealing others. To accept such portrayals without questioning is to mistake the surface for the substance. The untold truth may lie in the marginalized voices that are silenced, in the records of history that remain hidden, or in the perspectives that dominant powers choose not to amplify. Seeking truth beyond the surface requires courage because it often means questioning comfortable stories and challenging powerful narratives. It is easier to remain with what is fed to us, but the responsibility of integrity demands we dig deeper, uncover the layers, and search for what has been neglected. There is also a spiritual dimension to this idea. The surface of life often distracts us with glitter and appearances, with the outward display of wealth, status, and power. Yet these surface elements are transient and deceptive, masking the deeper truths of purpose, meaning, and accountability. A person who focuses only on the surface lives a shallow existence, chasing illusions that fade with time. The untold truth is hidden in the unseen, in the intentions of the heart, in the values that endure beyond material possessions. To perceive this truth requires reflection and inner awakening, a willingness to look beyond external success and recognize that true worth lies in sincerity, humility, and the unseen struggles of the soul. History itself testifies to this principle. Many figures who appeared insignificant in their time carried truths that later transformed entire civilizations. Conversely, those who seem powerful and untouchable on the surface often left behind legacies of failure and ruin once the deeper realities of their actions were revealed. The surface, therefore, is fleeting and misleading, while the untold truth endures and eventually comes to light. Those who learn to recognize this distinction are able to live with greater wisdom, avoiding the traps of superficial judgments and aligning themselves with deeper realities. Looking beyond the surface also requires patience. The truth does not always reveal itself immediately. Sometimes it emerges only after time has passed, when hidden details come to light or when the consequences of actions unfold. Impatience leads to shallow conclusions, but patience allows a person to see the full picture. Just as a seed buried beneath the soil must be given time to grow before it becomes visible as a tree, so too the untold truth often remains concealed until circumstances allow it to emerge. Those who cultivate patience are better equipped to recognize these truths when they appear, because they have trained themselves not to rush into premature judgments. In daily life, this principle reminds us to slow down, to resist the temptation of oversimplification, and to embrace the depth of reality. Whether it is in understanding another human being, reflecting on history, analyzing knowledge, or searching for spiritual meaning, the untold truth requires us to go beyond what is immediately presented. It demands humility, for one must admit that appearances can be misleading and that wisdom requires careful exploration of what lies beneath. To live with this awareness is to live with depth, to cultivate a mindset that does not settle for surface-level realities but constantly strives to see the hidden dimensions of life. The status of truth in society has never been constant. It shifts depending on the courage of individuals, the values of the community, and the systems of power that dominate the age. Truth in its essence remains unchanged, but how it is treated, how it is received, and how it is respected is deeply tied to the moral fabric of people. At times, truth has been honored, cherished, and given the highest place in public discourse, guiding the actions of leaders and shaping the conscience of nations. At other times, truth has been silenced, ridiculed, or deliberately distorted, treated as an inconvenience that disrupts comfort or threatens authority. The reality is that truth always possesses an intrinsic value, but its status in society is determined by whether people are willing to uphold it or whether they allow fear, greed, or negligence to bury it. When a society honors truth, it cultivates trust. Relationships between people are strengthened because words align with reality and actions reflect sincerity. Justice becomes attainable because decisions are based on facts rather than lies. Knowledge flourishes because scholars and thinkers are not pressured to conform to falsehoods, but are encouraged to seek what is real. Such a society rises in dignity and earns the respect of others because its foundation rests upon honesty. The status of truth in such an environment is high, and even when mistakes occur, they are acknowledged openly, allowing healing and growth to take place. The people within such a society feel secure, for they know that truth is not just an abstract concept, but a living value that protects them. But when truth is marginalized, everything begins to crumble. Lies may appear convenient in the short term, but they erode trust, corrode institutions, and plant seeds of suspicion among people. When leaders conceal the truth, their followers eventually lose confidence in them, and when citizens neglect truth in their daily dealings, the bonds of community weaken. The status of truth becomes low, not because the truth itself has lost value, but because people have chosen to trade it for temporary comfort or worldly advantage. History provides countless examples where societies collapse not simply because of external enemies, but because within their own ranks truth was sacrificed. Corruption spread, deception became normalized, and reality was buried under layers of fabrication until collapse was inevitable. What determines the status of truth in society more than anything else is courage. Truth by its nature is demanding. It forces people to confront uncomfortable realities, to admit mistakes, and to resist popular but false narratives. Many recognize the truth internally but remain silent, fearing consequences, ridicule, or loss of privilege. This silence lowers the status of truth because it signals that convenience has been prioritized over conviction. On the other hand, when even a small group of individuals decide to speak and live by truth regardless of the cost, they elevate its status. Their courage inspires others, their voices break barriers, and their actions create ripples that eventually shift the moral compass of their communities. The courage of a few can raise the status of truth for the many, while the cowardice of the many can allow falsehood to dominate. It is also worth noting that truth often gains status not in times of ease, but in times of trial. When everything seems comfortable, people may neglect the importance of truth, assuming it is optional. But when crises erupt, when justice is demanded, or when lies unravel into chaos, society turns back to truth as the only anchor. This shows that truth never truly loses its value. It is people who forget its importance until circumstances remind them. The challenge is whether a society can uphold truth consistently, valuing it not only in moments of desperation, but also in times of stability. Those who do so build resilience because they have safeguarded the very principle that sustains justice, trust, and unity. The status of truth is also tied to how it is transmitted. If parents raise children to value honesty, if institutions are built on transparency, and if knowledge is passed down with integrity, truth retains a high position. But if deception is normalized from a young age, if systems are designed to hide rather than reveal, and if distortions are celebrated as cleverness, then truth is degraded. Every generation inherits not only material resources but also moral values, and the way truth is treated in one era shapes the culture of the next. A generation that compromises truth leaves behind confusion and weakness, while a generation that honors truth leaves behind clarity and strength. In the end, the status of truth in society reflects the choices of its people. It is not dictated by abstract forces but by daily actions, by the honesty in conversations, the integrity in business, the courage in leadership, and the commitment in scholarship. A society may claim to value truth, but unless that claim is lived out in practice, the status of truth remains low. Conversely, even a small community can elevate truth if they live by it with sincerity, showing that the worth of truth does not depend on numbers, but on conviction. Truth remains eternal and untouchable in its essence, but its status in society rises or falls depending on the willingness of people to embody it. Every individual carries within themselves a responsibility towards truth, a weight that cannot be shifted entirely onto others, for the path of truth is not only collective, but also deeply personal. It is easy to point fingers at leaders, institutions, or systems, blaming them for concealing or distorting reality, but the true measure of integrity lies in whether a person themselves chooses to honor or to neglect truth in their own life. Each choice, each word, each action reflects how one engages with truth, and every small compromise accumulates to form the larger condition of society. To live responsibly towards truth means refusing to treat it as optional, recognizing that truth has a claim over us, and that how we handle it defines not just our reputation, but the very state of our souls. Engaging with truth requires effort because it does not always align with comfort. People often hide behind convenient lies, using them as shields to protect their pride, their status, or their ease. A person may know internally what is true, yet avoid acknowledging it because doing so would demand change or sacrifice. This avoidance, however, is itself a betrayal of truth. The responsibility towards truth requires honesty with oneself first, a willingness to confront inner contradictions, and the courage to accept realities that may unsettle one's ego. Without this self-honesty, all external claims of valuing truth ring hollow, because one who deceives themselves will inevitably deceive others. The first battlefield of truth is within the heart, and victory there lays the foundation for integrity in all other spheres. Responsibility also extends to how truth is spoken. To speak the truth is not simply about accuracy, it is also about timing, wisdom, and intention. A person may reveal facts but do so with the purpose of humiliating others or inflaming conflict, and in such cases the responsibility of truth is violated. Truth must be upheld with sincerity, with the aim of bringing clarity, justice, or guidance, not with the intention of harming. This balance requires discernment, for truth must not be twisted into a weapon, but neither should it be hidden out of cowardice. The responsible individual learns when to speak, how to speak, and why to speak, aligning their words with both honesty and wisdom. This alignment transforms truth from being a blunt tool into a force that nurtures understanding and corrects falsehood without creating unnecessary harm. The responsibility towards truth is tested most severely when it conflicts with personal interest. It is easy to advocate for truth when it benefits one's position, but far more difficult when truth exposes one's own errors or threatens one's own advantage. This is the real trial, for it reveals whether a person values truth as a principle or only as a convenience. To stand by truth, even when it costs something precious, is the mark of true integrity. History honors those who upheld truth at personal expense, while it forgets or condemns those who compromised it for temporary gain. The individual must constantly ask themselves, am I serving truth or am I bending it to serve myself? This question, if answered with sincerity, becomes a compass that prevents one from straying into hypocrisy. There is also responsibility in how truth is preserved. Not every truth needs to be shouted publicly, but every truth must be safeguarded against distortion. A person may be entrusted with knowledge, with a testimony, or with an experience that holds significance. To alter it, to exaggerate it, or to conceal it for selfish motives is a betrayal. The responsible approach is to protect the integrity of what one has encountered, ensuring that when it is shared, it is conveyed as faithfully as possible. This duty is not only about honesty, but also about preserving the chain of trust that binds people together. Individuals fail in this. Misinformation spreads like wildfire, destroying relationships, communities, and even entire societies. Responsibility towards truth also involves listening. Many people assume that truth is only about what they say, but it is equally about how they receive what others say. Listening with fairness, without prejudice, and without prematurely dismissing uncomfortable ideas is part of this responsibility. Often, truths are ignored not because they lack evidence, but because they come from voices that society has marginalized or from people we personally dislike. To reject truth because of its source is to betray our duty towards it, for truth does not change based on who speaks it. The responsible person trains themselves to recognize truth even if it comes from unexpected places, and act upon it regardless of personal preference. In daily interactions, this responsibility manifests in subtle yet powerful ways. Choosing not to spread rumors, refusing to embellish stories for entertainment, acknowledging one's mistakes instead of shifting blame, and ensuring fairness in judgments are all practical expressions of responsibility towards truth. These actions may appear small, but they shape the moral environment of society. When individuals uphold truth consistently in their personal lives, they contribute to a culture where truth is respected collectively. But when individuals neglect these responsibilities, society becomes a breeding ground for deception, as lies grow unchecked through the complicity of silent bystanders. Ultimately, the personal responsibility towards truth is a lifelong commitment. It is not a single choice, but a series of choices made every day, in conversations, in decisions, and in reflections. Each individual has within their power the ability to elevate truth or to degrade it, to preserve it or to betray it, to live by it or to bury it beneath convenience. This responsibility cannot be transferred and it cannot be escaped, for every person is accountable for how they engage with the truth entrusted to them. The untold truth, once revealed and acted upon, becomes a force of elevation, lifting both individuals and communities to heights they may not have imagined for themselves. It has the power to grant clarity in confusion, direction in uncertainty, and strength in weakness. Many times, people remain trapped in cycles of despair, division, or purposelessness, not because solutions do not exist, but because truths have been concealed or ignored. When those truths finally come to light, they act as keys, unlocking potential and providing a new sense of dignity and resilience. To engage with truth is not merely to know, it is to be transformed. For knowledge that remains stagnant is of little use, but truth that is lived out becomes a source of empowerment and growth. On an individual level, truth gives a person identity and stability. A human being who lives by deception, whether deceiving others or themselves, is constantly unsettled, torn between appearances and reality. But when a person embraces truth, even if that truth is painful, they begin to live with integrity, and this integrity elevates their character. They no longer waste energy maintaining masks or fearing exposure, for they are anchored in what is real. This anchoring brings dignity, because a person aligned with truth walks with confidence, knowing that their foundation cannot be shaken by the shifting winds of falsehood. Elevation here does not mean wealth or status, but inner strength, self-respect, and a sense of peace that comes only from living in harmony with reality. For communities, the revelation of truth brings unity and healing. Falsehood breeds division, because lies are often tailored to exploit differences, to pit people against one another, and to obscure common ground. When truth emerges, it dismantles these illusions and allows people to see clearly what binds them together. History provides countless moments where communities fragmented by suspicion or conflict were restored by the uncovering of truth, whether it was the exposure of injustice, the acknowledgement of hidden pain, or the rediscovery of shared values. This restoration does not happen overnight, but once truth is acted upon, it sets in motion a process of reconciliation, allowing wounds to heal and trust to grow. The status of a community rises when truth is embraced, for it becomes resilient against the forces that thrive on deception. Truth also elevates by granting clarity of purpose. Many wander aimlessly, unsure of what direction to take in life because they are guided by illusions of success, happiness, or power defined by others. The untold truth, once revealed, strips away these illusions and points towards a higher path. It clarifies what truly matters, what goals are worth pursuing, and what sacrifices are meaningful. This clarity transforms lives, giving people not just motivation but also endurance, because they now understand the purpose behind their struggles. To act upon truth is to align oneself with meaning, and meaning elevates human beings above the distractions of superficial existence. Another way truth elevates is by strengthening resilience in the face of trials. Falsehood creates fragility because when challenges arise, illusions shatter and leave people disoriented. But truth, even if difficult, prepares individuals and communities to face reality as it is. When people accept the truth of their circumstances, they stop wasting energy in denial and instead channel their strength into endurance and solutions. This resilience becomes a source of collective pride, allowing people to withstand hardships with dignity. It is often seen that those who embrace truth, no matter how bitter, carry themselves with greater steadiness than those who live in denial, because truth fortifies them from within. Truth, when acted upon, also fosters justice. Elevation is not only about inner dignity, but also about societal fairness. When truths about corruption, exploitation, or oppression are revealed, they create the foundation for reform. A society that confronts these truths honestly is able to build systems that are fairer, more transparent, and more compassionate. This pursuit of justice elevates the entire community, for it creates an environment where people can trust one another and where individuals are valued not for superficial advantages but for their genuine contributions. Elevation here is collective, a rising tide that lifts everyone, because justice strengthens the bonds of society and ensures that dignity is not reserved for the few but shared by all. On a deeper level, truth elevates the human spirit by aligning it with values that transcend time and circumstance. To live by truth is to live by principles that remain constant even when the world around shifts. This alignment gives a sense of timeless dignity because it connects a person or community to something greater than fleeting trends or temporary gains. It is why figures who upheld truth, even when marginalized in their lifetimes, are remembered with honor centuries later. Their elevation did not come from worldly recognition, but from their commitment to truth, which granted them a legacy that continues to inspire. The untold truth once revealed is like light entering a dark room. It does not simply expose what was hidden, it transforms how everything is seen. It gives direction, reveals obstacles, and allows one to walk with confidence. That light elevates because it removes the fear and uncertainty that thrive in darkness. And when people choose to act upon that light, their steps become purposeful, their lives become meaningful, and their communities become strong. The elevation that comes from truth is not temporary. It endures because it is built on a foundation that cannot be shaken by lies or illusions.